screen?
Of course. Got it.
We are there, folks.
Yay. I'm trying to get this thing off of here. What is it doing?
Screen.
Of course. Got it.
Okay. I think we are on. Now, Chardonnay, you are in a master's program at Louisiana State University, Baton Rouge. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And tell us about your master's program.
So I'm in the master's program for social work. And I'll be starting my internship in January. That's what I was actually going to talk to you about. I got accepted into Northlake Behavioral Center, which used to be the state mental institution over here in Louisiana. It got closed down during Bobby Jindal's, whenever he was over all of that. That was one of the things that he did was he shut down a lot of mental institutions. So it got closed down. However, a private entity bought it and reopened it.
So who did you say shut it down? Obama?
Jindal.
Jindal, Bobby Jindal.
Yes.
Governor, former governor here.
Yes. So that was my exciting news I wanted to tell you.
Why did he shut them down?
I'm not really too sure. I know that I don't think that he really saw a need for mental health, because whenever he got into office, he closed down, a lot of things and shut funding off for a lot of mental institutions or, just different areas of mental health. And
so what will your internship involve? Congratulations, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm actually going to be working in forensics. So I'm super excited about that. So that's exactly what I wanted. And there were no areas, nothing around here that offered forensics that was, close to me. However, whenever I went in for my interview, one of the questions they asked me was what area, what would my concentration be in social work if I could just pick? And I told a forensic, I really wanted to do, law reform, possibly go to law school. We discussed that in great detail. And they have a lot of high profile cases. And she said, well, you're in luck because we have a lot of forensic work here. It's just not really publicized. They don't have it at all on their website or anything like that. So I'll be doing forensics. So I'm super excited about that because it will give me a chance and an opportunity to see both sides of the spectrum. I'll get to see social workers, and what all their job entails. And then at the same time, I'll be working directly with attorneys. So I'll be able to kind of see their side as, both sides of the spectrum.
Sounds like an A+ internship for you.
Yes.
Excellent. Wow. Okay. Congratulations.
Super excited. Excited.
And you start this in January, you said?
Yes.
Now, how do they define forensics there, and specifically the role of mental health in the forensics?
So forensics in social work is where you're working with people that have been incarcerated or are going through,
Is that all it means? Is working with people who are incarcerated? Is that how they?
Or probation through the court system? Those that are going through court.
Okay, so you're not going to be evaluating people on a pretrial basis.
I don't know. I guess we'll see what it all entails.
As forensic anthropology, for example, I have a degree in several degrees in anthropology, and forensic anthropology is usually about crime solving. Trying to find out who's guilty of what and what crimes have been committed and things like that. So you're dealing with, I guess they're obviously already in custody in some sense.
Correct. Yes.
In some sense.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that sounds very interesting. And again, I can't wait to hear about that. But tell me what you're working on right now.
Okay, so for this project,
just for the audience to know, the reason we haven't met with Chardonnay in, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Been too long is all I can say. Way too long. and I've missed you. And I think I know at least Ken Givenden has missed you too.
Hi Ken, if you're watching.
Anyhow, he will watch, I'm sure. But it's because you've been overloaded with homework, and I have suggested that we do your homework online and that I talk to you about it. To the degree that that's ethical and you feel like it's okay. And obviously, if there's anything that we shouldn't talk about, you'll tell me.
Correct.
Okay. So anyhow, what do you got? What are you working on tonight?
So right now it's kind of a group project thing that we're doing, and we're going to be divvying up the different areas. So she has a bunch of different bullet points that she wants us to cover for this presentation, this brochure. And it's a brochure that should be 10 pages max, so we can't go over 10 pages. And it's on a policy of our choice, which we chose let me see the formal name for it, the zero tolerance policies and the implications for juvenile justice. That's the policy that we're going to be focusing on. And so you want me to go through and read you the different bullet points that she wants us to include in this brochure?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to be doing, this brochure is like a policy analysis paper and will take several weeks, blah, blah, blah. So you have to do an overview of the policy, an historical analysis, the problems that necessitate the policy, a policy description, and in the policy analysis, you need to discuss each section in the above outline. If your policy does not have some of this information explained in your brochure, please do not skip any sections. So that's pretty much it. But this policy was probably the easiest one given and the most interesting for us, that we decided as a group, given that we can't go over 10 pages. A lot of policies, as we were kind of going through and looking, were very in-depth and didn't really pique our interest as much as this one did.
All right. Well, what have you done on it so far?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you.
Just open.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you where I would start, and it's kind of negative and cynical. This is zero tolerance of drugs in the schools, right?
That's correct.
Has it ever worked anywhere in the past 25 years? And if not, is it pure hypocrisy?
I would say that it probably hasn't worked.
Because zero tolerance would mean, tell me what zero tolerance would mean. Let's start with the definition. What would zero tolerance mean?
Unexcusable, no matter what the circumstance or situation is.
All right, but what are the consequences of that first offense? What is it? And what is an offense?
So
let me get hypothetical. I am a student at a school that is in your jurisdiction.
Mhm.
I bring a marijuana cigarette to school. It's in my pocket. I'm not smoking it. A police canine dog investigating somebody else smells my marijuana cigarette. What happens to me under a zero tolerance policy?
You're going to get expelled. You're not going to be allowed back on the premises, and you're more than likely going to face criminal charges. All
right. How often do you think that? In St. Tammany Parish, that's your parish, in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, how many students have been expelled for their first violation of drug rules?
I'm sure just about everyone that's been caught with it.
I asked how many.
I have no idea.
Well, I think that would be a very interesting question. Hang on, is your class is not just St. Tammany, right?
That's correct.
Your
Actually,
study group.
it's throughout the United States.
Hmm.
So
Well,
it's because we're doing virtual other than our internship,
okay, so I guess every student in the group should find out for their state and county where they live, they should find out how many students have been expelled. When was the policy first imposed?
I think 1980. Yeah, the 1980s.
That's going out into my life when I was your age.
And it's not just drug, it's also fighting and gang-related activities.
Kind of a racketeer and influenced and corrupt organizations act for schools, huh?
Yes.
So, all right. How many students have been expelled nationwide? But also, I think every member of this study group should answer the question for his or her own state and county. How many, and since the rule was imposed, say 40 years ago, 1981, when I was actually a lot younger than you are, I was only 21 then. And 1981 was a very good year. Anyhow, it was actually. I wish I was 21 again. I'm sure I'm totally unique in feeling that way too, right? Anyhow,
I do not wish to go back to 21. Maybe 28.
I was. You're 31 right now?
Yes.
Past 3 years have been bad or something?
Oh gosh, yes. At
At 21, I was almost on top of the world. At 21, I was a first-year graduate student at Harvard University. I spent half of my field year in British Honduras, Belize, and the rest of the summer in Mexico, in Yucatan, Chichen Itza, and that became the subject of my doctoral dissertation. Anyhow, that was a great. 81 was a fantastic year.
Yeah, it sounds like it for you.
And you were negative. You were -8 or something.
Yeah, I was not even thought of yet.
You were -8 years old. Anyhow, but I think that, I mean, just thinking about 1981 kind of blows my mind. I mean, in 1981 at Harvard, for example, zero tolerance of drug use at the college and the graduate school could have led to close to a 99% attrition rate. I don't believe I smoked a marijuana cigarette or any other kind of drugs that year at all. I was never big in marijuana, but a lot of people were, and it was very common, especially among the undergraduates, but even in the stately oaken halls of Connaught, where I lived, right by the University Museum complex. And seriously, I think that if Harvard had expelled everybody who used an illegal drug, it would have gone out of business, or at least been empty and sustained only by its endowment. There would have been no students there at all. Very few, maybe half a dozen or something. I might have been one of them. But
so, are you for the legalization of marijuana? Or are you against it?
That's really a totally different issue, and I don't know is the answer that I've given, because I think it's obvious that marijuana is much less harmless than a lot of other, much less harmful rather than a lot of other drugs,
including alcohol.
possibly including alcohol. I was going to say it's certainly no worse than alcohol. You know, I've known several alcoholics in my life. I've known several people who abused drugs in my life. I've never known anybody who used marijuana to become anything but kind of useless. That's
True.
really the worst thing that's happened to people who use marijuana. They sit around and kind of stare at the air, and you know, back in the 80s, it used to say, "Wow, that's really heavy, man." That's my vision of the typical stoner. But I can tell you I did some teaching while I was at Harvard, and I can tell you that among the undergraduates, people from the very best families in the world smoked a lot of marijuana. I mean, the names of undergraduates at Harvard, as you might imagine, they're the descendants of some very prominent people from the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. And most of them smoked pot. And this is kind of, by definition, the highest level of student society in the United States. Yale might disagree with that. Chicago, Stanford will glare at us when we say that, but Harvard is an elite school, very snobbish, and when you say that there's been a zero tolerance policy, I just wonder, okay, how many people were caught with drugs and expelled? I would really like to know that.
Well, I just looked.
Think you have access to that kind of information?
Well, you know, I have the web, but so they have something right here. Have zero tolerance policies made schools safer and more effective in handling disciplinary issues? And so for the most part, the answer is no. However, through the provision of mandated punishment for certain offenses, zero tolerance increases the consistency of school discipline and thereby the clarity of the disciplinary message to students is what they're claiming. But I'm looking at a chart and it says, let me see if I can share my screen somehow on here.
Maybe I have to authorize you to do that. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. No, it looks like you should all be able to do it, but I'll hit multiple just in case. You should be able to. I mean, this is just as far as I know, in the 1970s at least, I graduated high school in 74, horrifying as that is. I graduated high school in 74 and started college in 75. And as far as I know, there were no metal detectors on any door, any school entranceways anywhere in the United States in 1974. I could be wrong, but it was metal detectors were pretty much only for airplanes, I think.
Right.
And sometime by 1990s, I heard of them having installed metal detectors in a lot of schools in Los Angeles and other places. And I understand it's very common all over the country.
Metal detectors?
Yeah.
Oh, I would be interested to know.
Well, I mean, that's a symptom of gang violence, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying my impression is that the order and discipline of American schools has gone down, not steadily, but catastrophically in the past 40 years. It is my understanding that when I started graduate school, we lived in still a fairly safe and somewhat well-ordered country. And largely through the schools, all the generations since then seem to have fallen apart.
Right.
Now, in essence, that's what you're focusing on when you talk about zero tolerance, because you're talking about whether the disciplinary policies of schools have had a good social effect or not.
That's correct.
And my impression is that they have not. So,
No, right.
I mean, it's best handled on a local and regional basis, because obviously a place like St. Tammany in 1981, wow, I mean, that was basically still the old South. I remember I graduated Tulane in 1980.
Right.
And I graduated Tulane in New Orleans in 1980, and then moved to Harvard. And you know, to put it mildly, I had only a very vague impression of what St. Tammany was like when I was an undergraduate. Don't believe I ever set foot in it, except, driving over to Florida and go to the beaches or something. But I think my impression was that New Orleans was this one great beacon of light, and the rest was the old South. Just to give you an idea, I think in 1981, David Duke still lived in Orleans Parish. I don't think he'd even moved out to Jefferson at that stage, where he was later elected. I know he started out his career at the drugstore that I still go to. How weird is that?
That is weird.
But in other words, New Orleans was still a very well-ordered place too, and certainly New Orleans is now a chaotic mess.
Right.
And, that's the kind of level that we need to compare. How have things changed? I have this impression, and feel free to prove me wrong with your research in this group. I have this impression that the stricter laws get, the less effective they are.
I agree. It's progressively gotten worse.
But also just the concept of zero tolerance. I started off with that anecdote about the student body at Harvard and how high drug use was there. Not really, or not exclusively to indict Harvard, but to just say, if it's that way at Harvard, then obviously zero tolerance is a joke. Because if the best students in the United States were using pot in 1981 and somehow surviving it, then I guess that at inner city schools in South Chicago or even East New Orleans, it was probably close to 100%. And they were doing a lot more drugs, and so zero tolerance. I don't know.
It's just nobody. I guess it's just a lot of people didn't get caught initially.
Okay, so in other words, it's a total joke.
That's correct. It is. It's a joke. It didn't work.
Have you and any of your study group talked even to that extent about it yet?
No, we literally just had our meeting to review the documentation that she gave us on what exactly we were to do, the instructions. And then we collaborated and got together and decided which policy we were going to do. And so we were looking at several of them and narrowed it down to this. So
how many people in the study group are there?
5.
Well, you see, I think that's an interesting, I'm going to play professor here. If I were making suggestions for how to do it, are most of you from Louisiana, or none of your?
No, there's only one other person that's from Louisiana.
Okay, so you do South Louisiana. She should do either Northern or Western Louisiana.
Well, she's from Lafayette.
Okay, so she could do, that's Western, in terms of federal districts, that's, I believe, it's the Western District of Louisiana, right? I'm not 100% sure. We're in the Eastern District. I know that for sure. And even if Lafayette is right on the border, she could certainly do the Western District of Louisiana. And basically, that might be a good thing to focus on United States districts, United States judicial districts. Eastern District of New Orleans is New Orleans, Louisiana. Eastern District of Louisiana is New Orleans, St. Bernard, Plaquemine, Baton Rouge, St. Tammany, and everything north of the lake. And I think that Lafayette is, in fact, Western District, although I know that Western District is St. Charles and up by the Sabine River. But I'm pretty sure it's Lafayette too. I haven't seen any cases from Lafayette in the local courts here. And so if you split Louisiana that way, and then where are the other students from, do you know?
One's from California.
California.
Yes, California. And then
Where in California?
I don't know.
Well, you see, find out where she's from and have her do the district in California, because that'll probably, usually a district is more than one county, so it's not just hyper localized. And also each federal district court maintains its own records as far as drugs and violence and how many schools are involved in lawsuits.
Right.
And so, and often when there's a problem in the schools, these problems end up in federal court. So that would be an interesting way of organizing it. If you can talk them into it, and then let's just find out what the success or failure rate or what the impression is about what has happened to drug use in these areas in the past 40 years.
Right. That would be an interesting place to start with it, really, because it does ask, like, one of our bulletin points is problems that necessitate the policy. And then it's also asking for a historical analysis on it.
And what are the other elements of it? In other words, what preceded the policy? How did the policy go? And
an overview of the policy, a historical analysis, problems that necessitate the policy, and a policy description.
What if an A+ student is found, who might be on his or her way to Harvard, an A+ student is found with a joint?
And there's a zero tolerance policy put in place. So they throw everything away essentially for a joint. But I mean, think about the case that just happened with the girl that was in the Olympics.
Okay, tell me about it, because I don't know what you're talking about.
Very similar situation. She's in the Olympics. She won the Olympics.
Where?
I don't know. I don't remember where it was. I think it was, let me see. Hold on. Let me look up her name. I'm sure if anybody's watching this, I'm sure people know what her name was.
I don't. You've accused me of knowing everything.
You do know everything usually.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Hold on. Sha'Carri Richardson, that's who it was.
Okay, and where does she live?
Let's see. She was suspended for, okay, so they came back and they, instead of totally, kicking her out of the Olympics, they suspended her for 1 month from the U.S. Olympic team after failing a test for marijuana use. Richardson's suspension means that the 21-year-old cannot compete in the women's 100-meter race at the Tokyo Olympics, which begins July 23rd. But she actually broke a record. This girl did. 21 years old, she broke a record in the Olympics, but they disqualified her because she failed for marijuana.
Okay,
She failed
so
her drug test.
is that a success for zero tolerance to mess up somebody's life like that when 40 years ago, all the people, all the elites, if I can use that word, all the elites of the United States and every other country were already using pot?
In my opinion, no, it's not. But then you have it on the flip side of it. You have, people do make a good point when they say, well, you knew what the rules were, you knew what the rules and regulations were, and you still broke it. So it doesn't matter, what your personal feelings are on it. When you look at it from that standpoint, it's a rule and you broke a rule, then, it is what it is. And I mean, I guess that's the stance that schools are taking with this zero tolerance policy. But in my opinion, no, I don't think that that's okay.
Rules, laws. This is a off the wall question, but I've got several off the wall questions pending in my mind at once, and I have to remember them. But one is, many of us say that the origin of laws is in the book of Exodus, when Moses goes up Mount Sinai and gets the 10 Commandments. Is there anything about pot in the 10 Commandments?
No.
Now, this is getting more off the wall, but is there anything about pot in the Bible?
I mean, yes and no. Because, I mean, it says no mind-altering substances, right?
Where does it say that?
I mean, it doesn't say that word for word, not verbatim, but I mean, doesn't it make reference to something about, yeah, it does. Hold on.
I'll tell you an amusing little anecdote in a moment.
What?
There is a church in California, and I know the founders and current administrators, called the Church of Jah Healer, J-A-H, and there is a widespread belief that the Hebrews and other Indo-Germanic and other peoples in the ancient world, including Indo-Europeans, our ancestors, used marijuana extensively, and that it was a sacred plant to them. And there's a church in California that is dedicated basically to the worship of sacramental marijuana. And the head of that church called me just the other day, and she's got continuing legal problems.
Oh no.
And
so right here, the 1 Peter 5:8, be alert and of sober mind. That's what I was referring to.
But does that mean never drink communion wine?
No, I think it means excessively. Be of sober mind, because you can have a glass of wine and it not alter your way of thinking. But I mean, if you drink too much, of course, you're going to be highly intoxicated. So whenever I read that, I take it as a sober mind, meaning don't overly indulge. But you're not supposed to overly indulge in anything, including food.
Did you ever see the musical Jesus Christ Superstar?
No.
You should. Major cultural event of my life, anyhow. But the Last Supper, as portrayed in Jesus Christ Superstar, basically ends with Peter and some of the other apostles basically getting really drunk and not being able to deal with Jesus' arrest. And it sort of suggests that the reason Peter denied Jesus 3 times was because he was so drunk. It doesn't say anywhere in the story of the Last Supper how much wine they drank that night. And if that Jesus Christ Superstar interpretation is correct, they could have gotten quite sloshed. And Jesus certainly didn't preach against it. It was not one of his priorities.
No, and you know what else too? He does mention something about the brokenhearted in there. In terms of, I want to say it's wine. Let me see. Do you know what verse I'm referring to or no?
No, what did you say again? I didn't even hear the words.
There is something that's referenced in the Bible about drinking, and I want to say it's wine, and it refers to the brokenhearted.
Brokenhearted. Okay.
Yes. Do you know? You don't know what verse I'm referring to?
No, I don't. I mean, it could be in. It sounds vaguely like the Song of Solomon. There's a lot of wine in there, and in the Psalms. But anyhow, there are these people who believe, and there's a recent video about it in regard to the Indo-European peoples. I might have even sent it to you, but I probably sent it to you Telegram, and I know you're sort of behind on your Telegram reading.
Yeah, I am. I haven't even opened that up. Here it is, Timothy. It's in Timothy. Drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake and thine often infirmities of heavy hearts or of bitter souls.
Oh, okay. That sounds pretty straightforward and simple.
Yes.
I mean, and obviously, if you drink enough to sort of relaxing about your troubles, you're getting a little bit buzzed there.
Yeah, and here's another one. In Psalms, wine that gladdens the heart of man, oil that makes his face shine, and bread that sustains his heart. Here's another one. Proverbs, let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his misery no more. So there's actually quite a few.
If he remembers his misery no more, he's drunk.
Oh, he's wasted. He's wasted. Okay, hold on, Courtney. I'm on this thing, baby. Okay, I'll save it and I'll look at it later. So yeah, there's quite a bit in there about drinking. So, I mean,
I'm going to share something with you, which is kind of light academic.
Are we live on Facebook right now?
Yes, we are. Why?
I wonder if anybody's writing on there. Let me see. Hold on. I'm going to it right now.
Do you see what I'm sharing with you right now? Just came out a couple of weeks ago. The Indo-European cannabis cult.
Oh yeah.
And he mentions the use of cannabis in the Bible. And like I say, I know these people. I could have them. I should have them on a podcast one of these days.
Yes, you really should. Did you hear about that situation that happened with Travis Scott?
No, what's that?
Oh my gosh, you haven't heard about that?
No, what's going on?
So Travis Scott is a rapper, and he had this he took over Astro World over there in Texas, I believe it is.
Okay.
And so he held this massive festival, and they were saying that it was kind of like a sacrificial type of thing. So they had like I want to say like 5 people that passed away in there, but they had people that were like passing out, and they did a comparison on a few different videos that I saw of the entranceway of Astro World. And I'm assuming it was in the Satanic Bible. I'm not really too sure, but you should look it up after you're done looking up this.
That's okay. This is the church I was telling you about, the Jah Healing Temple, Kemetic Temple of the Divine. You must be at least 13 years of age to see this page. Well,
I have to go check this website out. Hold on.
JahHealingTemple.org, Arizona, California. App. Sacrament. Yes, believe, practice, document, declare. Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993. Sacred incense. Anyhow, you know that California now has legal recreational marijuana, right?
Yes.
So where does that leave their policy, their zero tolerance policy?
Out the window, out the door. That's where it leaves it. Unless they're not going to classify marijuana as a drug anymore.
Well, I mean, they could still prohibit it in a school, I guess, even if it were legal.
Yeah, because I mean, they do cigarettes.
Yeah, and I mean, you could say that what I said at the beginning. My impression of pot is it makes people kind of slow, and being slow is not necessarily conducive to being a particularly quick student, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, this is her, Big Bear Boulevard in Big Bear, California. Go up in the cool hills above Los Angeles and get stoned. I think you know somebody who was just in Big Bear, don't you?
I don't know. Who was in Big Bear?
Yo mama.
Was she?
Yes.
Is that where she did her little thing at?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize it was there.
You'll have to ask her if she ran into the Church of Jah Healing.
Absolutely not. She's like not for any of that.
Religious cannabis. All religion who end in prayer with Amen reveal Egyptian origins. You can see this is really heavy stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyhow,
I'm gonna have to go look at this site.
Oh yeah, and look at the. It's called, the other one is called Survive the Jive on Indo-European cannabis, and basically that guy, the Survive the Jive guy, does a really good job. I actually support him on Patreon. He's so good. And marijuana is a big thing. It's been around for a long time. It's apparently, according to both the Rastafarians in Jamaica and the Jah Healing people in California, it's got a biblical origin. And I mean, according to this guy who does Survive the Jive too, it was used basically all over Eurasia.
Mm-hmm.
Extensively. And I mean, the guy on Survive the Jive, he was talking about these hunters in the steppes, and they've found some archaeological ruins where apparently they didn't have marijuana cigarettes. So what they would do is they would have a tent, and basically they would burn the pot in the fire, and everybody would be inside the tent. And
So they'd bong it out essentially.
yes,
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
it is. But I mean, in other words, okay, another media reference that you must consider in this study group you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Reefer Madness.
What is it?
Have you seen the 1930s movie Reefer Madness?
No.
Okay, another part of your pop culture assignment to understand the history of marijuana. Reefer Madness. You know that until even through the 1920s, marijuana was basically legal, totally legal.
I feel like it should be.
Well,
I'm for it.
do you know why it became illegal?
I don't know why. I assumed it had to do with tax purposes, but I'm really not too sure why. Like what happened?
What kind of purposes?
Tax. I figured it would be difficult to tax, and maybe that's why.
There's a tax on every kind of tobacco.
Yeah.
No, I mean, no, basically, the way I understand it, yeah, another pop culture question. Have you seen the movie Citizen Kane?
No.
My darling, we've got to bring you up to date on your Hollywood movies, because if you
I don't watch television too much.
It's not television. These are movies that came out in the theaters.
Well, I don't watch movies. I rarely ever go to the theater.
I think we've got to sort of change you around somehow, because Citizen Kane is considered by many the greatest movie ever made. I mean, there's several contenders for that title within a few years of there. One is Gone with the Wind.
Seen that.
You've seen that? Good.
One of my favorite movies.
But two or 3 years after that, I think 2 years after that, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, and The Maltese Falcon. Have you seen all of those?
Nope.
You haven't seen Casablanca?
Nope.
Haven't seen The Maltese Falcon?
Nope.
Okay, but the most important one for this purpose is Citizen Kane, because Citizen Kane, you've heard of Orson Welles?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Orson Welles is considered one of the greatest actors and cinematographers who ever lived. And he Citizen Kane was basically his first production. And what it was a critical treatment of the life of William Randolph Hearst. Now, have you heard of William Randolph Hearst?
No. His name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
William Randolph Hearst, you've heard of Hearst Publications?
Yes.
Okay, Hearst Publications, founded by William Randolph Hearst, now includes all sorts of glitzy, shiny magazines.
Maybe it's his last name. That's why he sounded familiar.
Yeah, but William Randolph Hearst basically got his start in the late 19th century. He ran the first major newspaper chain. He was sort of like a 19th century Rupert Murdoch. Okay. William Randolph Hearst, his greatest, some would say his greatest coup as a newspaper writer was to start the Spanish-American War. He published the probable lie that the Spanish had blown up the battleship Maine in Havana Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And he used his newspapers basically to whip the country into a frenzy, to declare war on Spain and seize Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippine Islands.
So typical media ploy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
And he also had a great impact on World War I also. Not by World War II, he was getting kind of old. But he also was compromised there because he had become at one point very close friends with Adolf Hitler. So anyhow, Hearst basically put tremendous pressure on the government to outlaw marijuana because he had interests in other forms of paper and other forms of rope. And he didn't want hemp to be grown to supply paper and rope products. Well, you're smiling. Do you know who the first big producer of hemp rope in the United States was?
Nope. Who?
Okay, let's put the after Donald Trump, who was the richest president we ever had?
After Donald Trump?
Well, in rank, not since Donald Trump, but I mean.
Oh, I was like,
if you rank the presidents by their net
the Clintons. I don't know who.
The second wealthiest president after Donald Trump in the history of the United States was George Washington.
Okay.
He was primarily a planter, but one of his most profitable crops
was hemp.
Hemp, yes. Did you know that?
Interesting. Okay, interesting. I didn't know that, but that's okay.
James Madison, the father of the Constitution.
That is crazy.
Obviously, in considering the value to the importance to American values of zero tolerance policy, these are relevant questions. It's possible that all the founding fathers smoked marijuana at one point or another, because hemp was a major product of colonial Virginia, together with cotton and tobacco. And basically, hemp was used primarily for rope. It was what kept the British Navy sailing in the height of the British Empire. And there was, they did in the late 19th century, they started using sisal, henequen from Mexico, as an alternative source of rope, but most of the rope used in the 19th century would have been made of hemp. And William Randolph Hearst basically didn't have hemp interests. He had sisal interests, and he had forest interests, regular lumber interests. And so he was pushing very hard against hemp, and he supposedly commissioned Reefer Madness. That was how that long circle of stories and movies. But you must see Reefer Madness, because I think you'll die laughing.
I'm gonna go watch it tonight. I have it written down right here on my thing.
It was an anti-marijuana propaganda flick, but it was just so over the top that people now watch it and just crack up laughing.
I'm gonna go watch it. I have that one, Citizen Kane and Casablanca. There was one more that you mentioned, but I didn't write it down. I figured I'd go back.
Maltese Falcon.
What is it?
The Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon. Okay.
Another one you might want to put on the list is High Noon.
High Noon?
1950 High Noon.
Okay. Got it.
I'll give you one more.
Okay. What is it?
Sunset Boulevard. Most of those are what are called cine noir. Sunset Boulevard, High Noon, Casablanca, Maltese Falcon. Your introduction to cine noir will be complete once you've seen all of those.
Okay.
And Citizen Kane is just an amazing movie. I won't tell you anything more about that because it's got some noir characteristics, but as soon as you're done with Citizen Kane, start reading up about William Randolph Hearst, because
Okay.
the lead character there, Charles Foster Kane, is clearly modeled after him. Anyhow, in other words, oh, I'll tell you another American, another American emblematic thing of related to marijuana. This is a very little known fact. Let's look at. This is just a hilarious little detail. I think before we've talked about elections before 2020 that were highly dubious elections. Have we had?
Yes.
So do you remember the discussion of the election of 1876?
I don't know. I mean, I know for a fact we never discussed the cannabis and intellectual property.
No, we didn't. I know for a fact we didn't do, but this is just a little side note. One of the many reasons that Samuel Tilden was so rich was because he had acquired the patent at that time on medical marijuana. And it was called Tilden's extract. And Tilden, the amusing thing is that Samuel Tilden actually won both the popular and the electoral vote in 1876, but he never became president because
he lost the electoral college, right?
No, he won the electoral college.
Oh, it says right here, but he lost the vote in the electoral college.
That isn't quite accurate. He ultimately conceded having lost it because the sitting president in 1876 was Ulysses S. Grant. Tilden was a Democrat. He was a Northern Democrat. He was the former mayor of New York City and the former governor of New York State. But Tilden had promised to restore sovereignty to the South. He had promised to withdraw all Northern troops from the South 11 years after the end of the war, and basically put Southern whites back in charge of their own states. And Grant couldn't tolerate the idea of a Democrat taking over from him and doing that. And so they came up with stories of electoral fraud in, among other things, Louisiana, Florida, Ohio. And basically they said that he didn't really win Louisiana, Ohio, and Florida, and so didn't really win the election. So they shifted it, and they agreed to install Rutherford B. Hayes, who was another Northern general, as the Republican president. But the deal that Samuel Tilden worked out is, okay, I'll give up the presidency, but you will withdraw the troops from the South. And
so he still did exactly what he said he was going to do, despite the fact that he lost.
Well, yeah, he achieved. Well, that was the bone of contention. I mean, he was a railroad lawyer. He was an amazing guy. I mean, I love reading and studying the life of Samuel J. Tilden. You ever been to New York City?
I haven't. It's on my bucket list, though.
Oh, come on! You're way too young for a bucket list. You and I have to go to France together and meet Marion Maréchal. You're nowhere close to a bucket list. But we'll go up to New York from New Orleans one of these days, and we will walk on the steps of the New York Public Library, which is an absolutely magnificent structure with fabulous carved lions in the front of it. And the New York Public Library was one of the great projects of Samuel Tilden's administration as mayor of New York. And he also commissioned Central Park, which is like the central feature of New York City these days, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So a lot of what we associate with as the great cultural monuments of the city of New York, center of the Yankee universe, were created by a man who during the war was visibly pro-Southern. These are the contradictions inherent in all things. Anyhow, but he was also a pot millionaire. He owned the patent on Tilden's extract, and let's see here, advertisements for Tilden's extract characterized it as phrenic, anesthetic, antispasmodic, and hypnotic. Unlike opium, which was also legal, of course, it does not constipate the bowels, lessen the appetite, create nausea, produce dryness of tongue, check pulmonary secretions, or produce headache. Used with success in hysteria, chorea. What is chorea? I don't even know what chorea is.
I don't know.
Gout, neuralgia, acute and subacute rheumatism, tetanus, hydrophobia. Isn't that rabies?
And the like.
Anyhow, I don't know if this says it, but supposedly Tilden's extract was one tablet had the same effect as 7 marijuana cigarettes.
Jeez. That's a lot.
Yeah, so it was not only you didn't just get a buzz out of it. You were tripping, man.
I know. I wonder, like, what would happen if somebody were to smoke 7 cigarettes of marijuana
In class.
or 1 tablet of Tilden's
extract. And I mean,
Tilden's extract.
And the funny thing about it is that it was probably used by every teacher in New York City and a large number of the students and their parents in the 1860s and 70s.
Really?
Yes. This man was a multi-millionaire in the 19th century when money was worth something. It's really small potatoes to be a multi-millionaire these days, but back in those days, he was a multi-millionaire in gold dollars. And it was all from cannabis. Not all from cannabis. He was also a very good lawyer and, a corporate representative and things, and a very good governor and mayor too. But anyhow, how would zero tolerance deal with this? And what kind of sense does it make?
It doesn't make any sense. It's null and void.
And yet we still need to get back to the issue of how many students were expelled, how many A students were expelled, how many B students were expelled, how many.
I can't find it.
I wonder why. I mean, could it be that either it was never applied or that it was applied so erratically that it was a bad joke?
I'm going to look it up again. Hold on.
These are important issues. And I mean, one of the more important issues is, how is it even possible to declare a substance like marijuana illegal? I mean, again, I don't use it. I can count probably on my fingers the number of times I've tried it in my life, and I'm 61, and I don't think it will come out to an average of once per year for my entire life. I've never cared for the feeling it makes. I value my sobriety. I stopped drinking a long time ago too, for the same reason. I do not enjoy losing focus. Some people really do, though. Some people really, really, really enjoy the relaxation or whatever they get out of these substances. And
Do you have high anxiety?
no, I cause anxiety. You can ask your mother about that too. I don't. I have almost no anxiety whatsoever, but I cause anxiety in others on a regular basis.
Well, I have very, very, very high anxiety all the time. And I have like 1,000,012 things going through my mind 24/7 constantly. So for me, if I'm able to, if I don't have anything going on, of course, for the most part, I like to be in my right state of mind because of the fact that I just have too much going on for it to be altered. I really do. But every now and again, I'll catch a little bit of a break and I'll have a drink or a few drinks. And for somebody like me that has very high anxiety and my mind is constantly going, and it even inhibits me from sleeping at times. So it's more or less, like you said, the relaxation. So if I'm able to have a drink, even just one drink, it will kind of like take the edge off and I'll be able to like really sit back and just chill out.
That's cool.
So I can see why people, that suffer from different sort of things like that would want to use it, which, medicinal purposes, I guess, of marijuana. That's one of the reasons why they're trying to do that in cancer. So I think that there are a lot of benefits for it, but, and now that we've looked it up, and I definitely don't see anything in the Bible about it. I see an awful lot about drinking, but nothing really about marijuana.
Okay, let's try to find that then, because I believe these people that there is marijuana in the Bible. I haven't actually done my homework on it really. Let's see what we can find here. But marijuana in the Bible. Are we still sharing? I can't remember.
You still have it. Well, no, it's gone now. I'm sorry. I was looking at my computer screen. I'm still looking up this zero tolerance policy thing. So something I did find is that the establishment of this policy has roughly doubled the number of students who have been suspended or expelled since the 1970s.
Sorry, what does it say? Say that again.
It says that the establishment of this policy has roughly doubled the number of students who have been suspended or expelled since the 1970s.
Okay, and so how many students does that involve?
According to the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights, nearly 3 million students are suspended at least once each year, and over 100,000 students are expelled. The punitive nature of the zero tolerance policy has led to racial and ethnic disparities within school and juvenile justice system. In addition, the negative outcomes associated with the zero tolerance policies have been escalated with the placement of policy on school grounds. This occurrence has resulted in an increase in the number of school-based arrests and referrals to the juvenile court system for infractions that were once handled by school administration. The criminalization of certain kinds of school misconduct has created what is often referred to as a school-to-prison pipeline.
School-to-prison pipeline.
Yeah.
That sounds like a triumph for American educational system.
It makes total sense too.
Okay, are we sharing right now?
Yes, it's up. What?
Genesis 1:29, which Decker formed in 2010, is named after a Bible verse that is oft repeated by Christians in favor of medical marijuana. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, that to you shall be for meat. To Decker, a non-denominational Christian who follows the Bible in a literal way, it meant cannabis is meant to be eaten, whether in oil, whether in an edible. The South is the last frontier for cannabis law reform. What is this? What am I looking at? These devout Christians are using Bible to argue that pot is God's perfect medicine.
Yeah, I've heard something, and I've read it too, but I can't find it. But I mean, of course, it didn't specify, cannabis verbatim like that, but it did make reference to plants of the earth.
See. Anyhow, this is just it doesn't quote any more Bible passages. I thought that there were that people pointed to other passages also. I think that the jaw healing church, jaw is another. That's like Jehovah, Yahweh, another one of the names for God in the Bible. But
Here's one. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it according to their various kind. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good.
Well, that's right in the creation. That's for Genesis 1, right?
Right. Their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves will serve for healing. Ezekiel 47:12. No, it's Ezekiel, right?
Ezekiel. There's that prescription for bread in Ezekiel too. There's a brand called Ezekiel bread. I've eaten several times.
Here it is in Revelations 2, and the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nation. I mean, I guess that's probably something different.
Is marijuana a holy herb? Cannabis and religion, Wikipedia. Let's have a look at that. Different religions have varying stances on the use of cannabis, historically and presently. In ancient history, some religions used cannabis as an entheogen, particularly in the Indian subcontinent, where the tradition continues on a more limited basis. In the modern era, Rastafari, who doesn't love Rastafarians, use cannabis as a sacred herb. Meanwhile, religions with prohibitions against intoxicants, such as Islam, Buddhism, Baha'i, Latter-day Saints, Mormons, except with a prescription from a doctor, and others have opposed the use of cannabis by members, or in some cases opposed the liberalization of cannabis laws. Okay, cannabis laws. How is cannabis prohibited?
How is it?
Yes.
What do you mean? You go to jail if you have it.
That's what happened after the laws. How is it prohibited?
I don't know.
Either the US Congress or the state legislatures have prohibited ownership of a certain kind of property. I mean, plants that grow naturally are property, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous to me.
Well, do you happen to know the first time that a form of property was prohibited by federal law?
No, but what was it and when was it?
Well, let's talk about the first two actually, because the first two kinds of property to be prohibited by federal law required a constitutional amendment. Does that help at all?
Wait, the first two?
The first two forms of property, of personal property, that to become illegal in the United States had to be prevented by constitutional law.
No, what is it? What is it?
Well, the first is relatively well known. According to the census of 1860, 49% of the people of Louisiana owned this kind of property in 1860. What was it?
I don't know.
Slaves. Slaves were personal property.
Yeah, but I mean that's different than a plant.
Okay. Indeed, it is different from a plant, but
Way
it's still a form of
different.
property. It's still a form of property that was recognized by and
Okay, you're right.
protected by law.
Yes, you're right.
The second form of property. Now that I've focused on number one, what was number two? What was the second form of property outlawed according to federal law?
I have no idea.
1919 is the year. Ring any bells?
No.
The era in which the wine that you like to drink was illegal was called
The National Prohibition Act?
Prohibition. Yes,
Is that what you're talking about?
that was the 18th Amendment and
Okay.
implementing the Volstead Act. In other words, the first two times forms of property were made illegal, it required a constitutional amendment to do so. Now, why doesn't it require a constitutional amendment to
For cannabis.
prevent the ownership of pot?
That's a good question. Why?
Well, it's a funny thing. Do you know who repealed prohibition?
No.
It only lasted for 14 years. It basically lasted 1919 to 1933. And in Franklin D. Roosevelt's first term, prohibition was repealed. But Roosevelt also came up with this amazing new interpretation of the Constitution that, according to Article 1, Sections 8, 9, and 10, basically, according to Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress can regulate interstate commerce. And basically, according to the Roosevelt and Roosevelt court's interpretation of the Constitution, all Congress has to do is pass a law, and it can outlaw any form of contract, commerce it wants. And
that's part of the problem.
And yeah, it is part of the it's a big part of the problem, because it's part of the problem two ways. One is, if anybody had ever thought of that interpretation of the Constitution before 1860, I guess Congress could have just used its commerce power to outlaw slavery, except nobody would have voted for it because nobody believed that Congress had that kind of power before 1860. As a matter of fact, between 1860 and 1920, nobody believed that Congress had that kind of power either. And that's why it took the 18th Amendment to outlaw prohibition, to outlaw alcohol and bring in prohibition. So that's just an amazing magic that was performed by the Roosevelt court, basically. You've heard recently that Biden has been talking about stacking the Supreme Court.
No, I haven't heard that.
Trump appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court in one term, which is almost unheard of. It very rarely happens. Very rarely. I can't remember the last time a president had the opportunity to appoint 3 justices to the Supreme Court. But Trump got to. Neil Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett from New Orleans. And that was a pretty great coup for Trump, but because it happened so fast, and because he put Amy Coney Barrett in place, who may vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, in place of, and he used his power to. It was only because Ruth Bader Ginsburg died right before the election that he got to do that. But that was quite a coup for him to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg with Amy Coney Barrett. And everybody's so mad about that, and they're so worried about the repeal of Roe v. Wade, or the nullification of Roe v. Wade, I guess, that they've been talking about, and President Biden has established a committee to study the expansion of the Supreme Court up to 15 members, currently 9. And Franklin D. Roosevelt considered doing that too in his second term.
And what would that benefit? Why are they trying? Why is that important for them?
Well, because then Biden could appoint people who would approve his agenda. I mean, right now we've got a conservative heavy court, conservative majority court, basically, that is likely to. I mean, the big issue that's going up right now is his mandate, which he finally got OSHA to illegally announce. And I don't know if you heard this or not, but just a couple of days ago, the Fifth Circuit firmly declared that unconstitutional.
Okay, so are you talking about the vaccine mandate?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so they did declare it unconstitutional. I knew that. Okay, I didn't know that they had officially declared it unconstitutional. I knew that there was.
They did on a temporary basis 1 week ago, and they did on a preliminary basis. It's still not a permanent injunction, but they've issued what's called a preliminary injunction, and so it will go to the Supreme Court.
Okay, that was one of the things I was really nervous about whenever he announced that he had, put that into place temporarily, that you had to have the vaccine. I think it was by January 4th, if you were working in healthcare facilities, because of my internship.
Right.
I was very nervous about that. I'm like, okay, so where does that leave me with school? Because I'm not getting the vaccine. So
I don't think it's going to happen, so you can kind of relax.
Yeah, thank goodness.
I mean, we're on YouTube, by the way, and just for the record, we cannot discuss COVID on YouTube. I had one person when you were missing. I had one person who discussed COVID, and they took his video down.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So I think that's the limits of free speech have been well defined here, and I will not discuss. I have no interest in discussing it because the court seems to be handling it just fine.
I agree, 100%.
So anyhow, yeah, but yes, in the 1930s, Franklin D. Roosevelt, which some people called Frankie D. Rosenfeld, he wanted to initiate socialism in this country, and he did, in fact, initiate socialism. But in the early days of the socialistic New Deal, the Supreme Court was striking everything down. They were saying that everything he was doing was unconstitutional. And so he announced a plan to stack the court. And he was going to, I think he was planning on increasing it to 15. And his plan was to appoint one new justice for every justice over the age of 75, something like that. And since Supreme Court justices are appointed for life, that can be, I think that might have even been a majority of the court at that time. And so basically the old guys, to avoid that kind of crisis, they all stepped down. And all of a sudden the Supreme Court started approving the New Deal. And, we could talk about things like the ethnic makeup of the court at that point, and who was Justice Benjamin Cardozo, and who was Justice Felix Frankfurter, and is it terribly surprising they were voting for socialism? But anyhow, we won't talk about that either right now because it's too far off track. You've got to assemble as many detailed statistics as possible about expulsions and compare the rate of expulsion. I mean, did you say 100,000 people were expelled every year?
Yes.
What's the
according to this this site? I don't know if it said every year. Hold on, let me go back to it.
The interesting question about that is how many students are there in the United States?
Oh yeah, it does say that. It says nearly 3 million students are suspended at least once each year, and over 100,000 students are expelled.
Okay, what's the total student population, K through 12 in the United States?
Let's see. K through 12.
Total student population.
53.1 million.
What's 3 over 53.1?
Hold on one second.
3 million are suspended.
Oh, here we go. Census Bureau's report.
It's what?
The Census Bureau report. I don't know why I said
5.6%. 1 in every 20 students is suspended every year.
What side are you on? Do you have it out?
I just did the math.
You did the math. Okay.
I did 3 over 51, 3 over 53.1, right? 3 million suspended, 53.1 total population, right?
Right.
Now let's look at, so that's 5.64%, or rounded up to 5.65%. And that's 1 in every 20. And then now 0.1 divided by 53.1. Something wrong here. 0.1 divided by 53.1. Yeah, okay. 1/10, or maybe roughly 0.2%. 0.2% are expelled every year. And now let's find out how many students use drugs, use illegal drugs, according to statistics, knowing the statistics are going to be under the reality. This is an interesting statistics. Of the 9 million full-time college students in the United States, 6% used illicit drugs for the first time in the past year. That doesn't say that 6% is using it. It says 6% used illicit drugs for the first time in the past year. How many, of those were in the 5% who were suspended every year, I wonder. Number of full-time college students aged 18 to 22 who used alcohol or illicit drugs for the first time on an average day. 2,000 use alcohol for the first time on an average day. That means 700,000 new users per year. Is that right? Any illicit drug use, marijuana, almost the same. Hallucinogens, prescription type pain relievers. Why is that on this list?
I don't know. Look, heroin at very bottom, heroin 19. That's crazy.
That's 19 per day.
I know, that's what I'm saying. That's pretty high, I feel like.
$19 per day. I mean,
Considering the drug.
Yeah,
anyway.
heroin, I was going to say heroin is nasty stuff. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's shocking to me, actually. I would not think that at all. I would have never guessed that. Alcohol, I mean, I could guess that.
2,179 per day for the first time. Wonder who goes around and collects these data. Whatever it says, it's probably higher in reality, right?
Right, because not everybody's going to be truthful. I mean, what is it, a survey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that.
And in other words, let's see, what's this chart about? Number of part-time students who use alcohol or what good does it do to separate full and part-time students? I'm not sure. Almost as many use heroin, whether they're full or part-time.
Isn't that crazy?
I don't believe I've ever known anyone who used heroin. Well, take that back. Yes, I have. Because I once met a person who claimed to be Angelina Jolie's heroin procurer.
What?
Long story, maybe another time, but he was, not that long a story. He was arrested in Thailand and deported back to the United States. And his first explanation was, the lady I work for will get me out. Oh, really? What's her name? Have her phone number? You've probably heard of her. Her name is Angelina Jolie.
Was he being serious?
He was dead serious. He had been.
Did he know her?
We never got confirmation from her, but he did get counsel very quickly.
Interesting.
He was arrested. Because he was obviously a very well-connected drug dealer, because he was arrested for selling drugs to a Thai princess.
Where was this? Where did this happen?
Thailand. He was arrested in Thailand.
Oh, Thailand.
And brought back to Los Angeles.
That's interesting.
Anyhow,
my ex.
I've been in all sorts of interesting places at interesting times. What can I tell you?
My ex was actually addicted to heroin.
Now what?
Yeah, my ex-boyfriend was addicted to heroin. I didn't know, obviously. Obviously, I didn't know. And I'm so ignorant when it comes to drugs, because I'm scared to even take a Tylenol. I don't mess with anything like that. I never have. So I had no idea. And been on it for like 3 years. I thought he was bipolar, if you want me to be completely honest with you, because of his mood swings, up, down. But come to find out it was drugs. It's
Yeah.
awful.
What happened to him eventually?
He went to Tennessee to a live-in rehab. And he actually ended up getting clean and he worked there. So he ended up staying in Tennessee for 2 years. So, the relationship ended. We just, it was still platonic. Didn't end on bad terms at all. It was just a mutual understanding, like, hey, you're there, I'm here. It's not gonna work. But I'm assuming he's still clean. I mean, I don't know. But I know he's got kids now and he's with somebody. So I hope for his sake he's clean. Because he's a wonderful man. Wonderful man. He just suffered with an addiction. It's very sad. Very, very sad.
Guy who claimed to be Angelina Jolie's procurer is now an artist in San Francisco.
Really?
Yeah, he seems to be doing okay, but my impression is that it's bad stuff because in that he's still alive, I assume that he has gotten a complete set of dental implants or dentures because he had no teeth by the time he arrived back in Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes, he was.
When he was only on heroin?
I didn't.
Guess is as good as mine.
I didn't do any drug tests on him, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
He only talked about providing Angelina Jolie with heroin.
Interesting. Well.
What if that now? I guess we don't know anything about her history in school, do we? I mean, she's obviously graduated before the one zero tolerance policy was implemented, but what if they applied it to her?
Yeah.
I mean, this is another question for your study group. What happens to people who get expelled for using drugs? What, do they all end up in jail? I mean, I guess not all of them do, but you quoted that line about the school to jail pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty gruesome thought, isn't it?
Well, I think it has something to do with the age in which you get, if you're busted with that in school. I mean, let's look at it from a freshman's perspective. Your brain isn't fully developed at that young of an age. So, I mean, you're 14, 15, a freshman in high school. And let's say you have marijuana on you and you get expelled and you end up in, on some sort of diversion program or something.
I'm sorry, what?
A diversion program instead of probation, which if it's your first time getting in trouble for something like that, and I would assume you would be on diversion. So if that were to happen, I mean, psychologically, what does that do to somebody who is just starting off, in high school? I would imagine it would weigh heavily on your self-esteem. I would think that it would label you, you're going to get labeled throughout schools, and psychologically, what does that do to you? So I can see the correlation between the two, is my point.
Basically, you need to sort of follow this site and see if you can push it back into high school. SAMHSA, SAMHSA.gov. Look at this one. Number of part-time college students age 18 to 20 who use drugs or alcohol on an average day.
Yeah, that's significantly high.
250,000 alcohol, almost 200,000 marijuana, 3,600 on cocaine, hallucinogens.
You know what other statistic I'm really interested in? How many people are reoccurring in the system after being arrested or reprimanded rather through a court system? Let's start in high school, I guess. How many, like, what's the statistics of that becoming a reoccurring event? I would think that's high as well.
The word is recidivism, right?
Yes.
Recidivism. I guess I'm kind of interested in another thing. If somebody's expelled and not processed in a criminal sense, what happens? Do they go to a different school?
Well, I don't think you can if you're expelled.
I mean,
if you're expelled, I think the only other alternative is for you to go to an alternative school.
Well, I mean, another school, okay. Why am I missing this? I mean, that's not really a punishment, right? If you just go to a different school.
No, not just a different school. You would have to go to an alternative school. So a school that is for other kids who have been expelled for disciplinary issues.
So kind of a special school.
Yes.
A day in the life. Is that what this is called? A day in the life of college students? Because this shows almost 1.2 million use alcohol on any given day, 700,000 use marijuana. Well, can you find that out for me before the next meeting? I would really like to know what happens to, shall we call, the people affected by zero tolerance policies. What are their life trajectories? Does it improve anybody's life? I mean, I really wonder if it doesn't. What else is there besides drug use? I mean,
guns, or gang affiliation. Let me see what else they had specified it in the fighting and possible gang related activities.
Again, okay, how do you define gang related activities?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't know how they're defining it.
Well, I mean, that's
a gang is
what? Zero tolerance of gang related activities. I mean, what if you're a member of college of young Republicans or something?
Well, no, that's not a gang. A gang is people that are involved in illegal activities.
Steve Bannon just got arrested. He's a Republican. I
mean, yeah, that's a really fine line nowadays, I guess.
Well, it's true that, for example, Samuel Tilden. We were just talking about Tilden. One of the things Tilden did as mayor of New York City was he, strange little historical connection to your parish, he smashed what's called the Tammany Ring and Boss Tweed and the Tammany Gang, which was a group of Irish, basically a group of Irish gangsters who were having a major impact on New York in the 1860s. You ever heard of the Tammany Gang?
No.
Boss Tweed?
Mm-mm.
Well, you live in St. Tammany Parish, so there's at least a nominal connection. Right. And I mean, in other words, gangs hover on the edge of, I saw an interesting movie the other night, Belfast. The Belfast, it was about the Protestant Catholic conflicts of the 1960s and 70s. I was actually over in London when that first started. And the Protestants and the Catholics formed opposing gangs that were fighting each other as part of the overall political conflict between Protestants and Catholics through the elections in United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And it spread, it continued on through the 70s and was finally kind of squelched by Maggie Thatcher. But I don't know, it's a very strange thing. I mean, gangs just mean groups of people, right? And
Yeah.
And a gang that starts out as a political or a sports organization, I mean, could easily I guess you need to find out how they define gang activities.
Yeah, there is no real definition of it from, I mean, what I'm seeing anyway. But I mean, if you were, let's say you were just to look on Google, right? Definition of gang. I mean, it's a very general definition, an organized group of criminals. That's it.
I'm just going to do a search here. I know that first thing to know were the color codes, and Bloods wearing red, Crips wearing blue.
Look, here's the federal definition. Here we go. The federal definition of gang, as used by the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration, and Customs Enforcement, is an association of 3 or more individuals whose members collectively identify themselves by adopting a group identity, which they use to create an atmosphere of fear or intimidation, frequently by employing one or more of the following: a common name, a slogan, an identifying sign, symbol, tattoo, or other physical marking, a style or color of clothing, hairstyle, hand sign, or graffiti, whose purpose in part is to engage in criminal activity and which uses violence and intimidation to further its criminal objectives, whose members engage in criminal activity or acts of juvenile delinquency that, if committed by an adult, would be crimes with the intent to enhance or preserve the association's power, reputation, or economic resources.
Where's that? Where is that? You want to share that? Is that what
This is on the National Institute of Justice.
Okay. National Institute of Justice. Look at this chart here. All these, I mean, how many people wear red or blue on any given day in school?
I mean, a lot. And it's the Bloods and the Crips, yeah.
Have you ever worn either red or blue?
Certainly so, but I had to be very careful about like bandanas and things of that sort.
Really? Even no, where were you going to school?
Yeah, I went to Pearl River, and it's already a very race is a very controversial topic over there. So you had to be very careful about things that you wore or things that you said or anything of that sort.
Am I doing the right search here? National Institute of Justice definition of gangs?
Yes.
Aha, is this what you found?
Yep, that's it. Yep.
The group has 3 or more members generally.
Oh wait, that's youth gangs. I didn't see that. Hold on, you're on a different page, but it's the same site.
Members share identity typically linked to a name, often other symbols. Okay. Obnoxious Charlie Lincoln question of the moment. Using these definitions alone, the Mickey Mouse Club fits, right?
Yes. Maybe not generally age 12 to 24, but other than that, yeah.
Well, age 12 through 24. I mean, cut it off at 14. It's still part of that group. And the Mouseketeers got old, right?
Yeah,
You
true.
can't stop them.
The group has some permanence and a degree of organization. I like that for
Mickey Mouse.
For the definition.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah.
So how do you, I mean, and criminal activity. They all wanted to go out into the park after dark.
Yeah.
That would make them a gang, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
And so what does that kind of definition do to the freedom of association guaranteed by the Constitution?
Mm-hmm. Null and void.
The First Amendment is null and void.
Conflict. Very conflicting.
I mean, basically, if you look at this one alone, why do we need to define gangs and talk about gang activities? If anybody is, I don't know what an elevated level of criminal activity. I love jaywalking. I like going out in Audubon Park after 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but I feel like they leave it vague like that. So it's up to their discrepancy, you see.
You mean their discretion?
Like it's up to whoever it is. So I guess in a school, it would be the principal's discrepancy. But of course, I feel like this is for a higher chain of command. But again, I feel like it's putting too much power in authority into the hands of somebody that just has no business, being able to have that much power. But we've discussed that already. So
you've talked about things being void for vagueness, I think, haven't we? Or is that a different conversation?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
But that is a problem. That's a very big problem. And again, I feel like it's done intentionally.
In other words, done intentionally to maximize the power of
That's correct.
I think the word you're trying to use is discretion rather than discrepancy, up to the discretion of the people in power.
That's correct. Yes.
Discretion. Abuse of discretion is a very common problem. The association may also possess some of the following characteristics. May employ rules for joining and operating within the association. Members may meet on a recurring basis. The association may provide protection of its members from others, may seek to exercise control over a particular geographic location or region, or it may simply be may defend its perceived interests against rivals. That would be the chess club trying to beat other schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
The association may have an identifiable structure. I don't know. These are interesting. This is a very interesting question. So, I mean, all of this, in other words, and yet the ultimate conclusion has to be that it hasn't really worked, because schools, I mean, you've got to address the question in your study group: have schools become more disciplined or less disciplined over the past 40 years? I think they've become a lot less disciplined.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess another question we've got to ask is, has the so-called zero tolerance policy actually weakened schools? Has it made life in schools worse? I think you're right. You picked a very interesting topic, but I don't think it's going to be easy at all to unravel all this. And you've got to look at a lot of different statistics. And I really think that you need to compare it in different parts of the country to the degree that
Yeah.
I think that even the difference between Eastern and Western Louisiana will be interesting, but the difference between Eastern and Western Louisiana and California, there are two other members of the study group. Where are they from? Or did I already?
I know one's from, oh wait, no, I already told you about the one from California. I'm not really too sure about the others.
Okay. But let's if it's supposed to be a nationwide study, see if there's anybody else try to get a more general coverage. Maybe have somebody do maybe the Southern District of New York, which would be Manhattan, or the Northern District of Illinois, which would be Chicago, something like that. And we've been talking for 2 hours. You're looking like you're getting kind of tired.
No, I was actually reading this because so the way that the group discussed us splitting it up was for each one of us to pick a bullet point. So kind of with what we're talking about, I'm wondering if I should so the bullet points are an overview of the policy, a historical analysis, or problems that necessitate the policy.
Let's do I mean, just you and me. If we're going to continue this, let's focus on historical analysis.
Okay, I thought that would probably be right up your alley.
Now, what is the next step in this in your group, and when does this project due?
Let's see. So we have to have our work division and timeline for the group to complete the assignment by Wednesday. So that would be tomorrow. No, what's today? Monday or Tuesday?
Today's Monday.
So in 2 days, the timeline's due.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me see when the project itself is due. I think it's in 2 weeks. So give me one.
I think we could cover a lot of interesting grounds discussing this. I mean, this looks like it's going to work out much better for podcasts than I actually anticipated.
Yeah, I think so too. Where is it?
Where's what?
The ledger of when it's due. Let me open up the syllabus. Hold on. I want to say it's due in 2 weeks.
Okay, well, that's a lot to do, but now forensic sciences, I'm just looking at this NIJ webpage we went to. Forensic sciences, National Institute of Justice. Forensic science is the application of sciences such as physics, chemistry, biology, computer science, and engineering to matters of law. Nah, it's not going to be directly relevant to your project. So
Here we go.
what?
Okay, so it's due Friday of week 7. So I am on, let me see what week we're on right now. I think we're on week 5. Yeah, so we're on week 5 right now.
So it's basically 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Because it's due right basically in the middle of Thanksgiving on Black Friday.
So. Yeah.
It's due on Black Friday.
Yes.
So funny. That's interesting.
They don't care.
Well, that doesn't mean you actually, it's not actually due on Monday afterwards then?
No, it's due on, it would be due on that Friday.
Even though it's Black Friday?
Yes, it says it's due Friday by 11 p.m.
You must finish your Black Friday shopping before 11.
I just need to make sure it's done before then.
Okay, well, how do you want to do the podcast? We haven't met in a long time. This has been a great one.
I agree.
It's been very exciting, and I'm looking forward to following up on it. But when do you want to do the next one? Do you want to do them like every day?
Well, tomorrow I'm gonna have my Zoom meeting with my class.
Uh-huh.
So my members of my group, actually. So I'll be on that Zoom meeting for probably about an hour, 2 hours. So tomorrow's not gonna work.
Okay.
We could do Wednesday if you want to do Wednesday.
Let's tentatively plan Wednesday. I have this tax group that sometimes meets on Wednesday, but yeah, but things have been going on. I don't know if they'll have a meeting on Wednesday night or not. So it'd be fun to meet with you on Wednesday again.
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
And if they do, we could do Thursday too. I mean, whatever, either
Okay, well,
Wednesday or Thursday.
I just want to keep up with this and find out what research you're doing and what statistics you put together. And this is a pretty great thing for somebody who might be going into politics.
I know. I'm really excited about it. And if we meet on Wednesday or Thursday, whatever, since I'm meeting with my group tomorrow, I can kind of discuss some of the things that we've discussed on the podcast with them.
Mhm.
And then maybe we can get some things answered, and I'll have more of like a definitive maybe outline of what is going to be in the brochure. So we can then go over what was discussed, with me in the group.
Okay, that's fantastic.
So.
Well, Chardonnay, I have the feeling you probably need to get to bed eventually.
Yes, I do. I have my little one. She's hasn't came in here too often tonight, surprisingly.
I hope she didn't join a gang.
You never know with her. My goodness.
I'll just finish this by talking about a lady who used to do housekeeping for me, who now lives in Slidell, actually. Her name is Donna, and she is just one of the sweetest, dearest people on earth. But she tells this story about how when she was a teenager, and she's a couple of years older than I am, actually. But she used to belong to a girl gang, and their definition, I guess they just decided to call themselves a girl gang. And this, I guess, was in the 60s or early 70s. They lived on the West Bank, and they would wear Love T-shirts. That was the gang uniform.
Okay.
And their gang activities were they would cross the river on the ferry at Jefferson, which is now not used anymore, that embarkation point, and they'd walk. They'd come to the East Bank and go over to the Audubon Zoo.
That was their gang activity?
That was their gang activity.
That's funny.
But I mean, isn't that interesting? They wanted to be cool and be part of a gang. And so they called themselves gang. And I mean, would there be zero tolerance for that?
According to the policy, that would be correct.
They were wearing a uniform.
Yeah.
They were somewhat organized. They met regularly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds.
If somebody had wanted to cause them a lot of trouble, they could have said, Donna and whoever her friends were, they're in a gang.
Yeah, that's right. Because it says, in response to growing concerns about drugs, fighting, and possible gang-related activities in and around schools.
And they were definitely age 12 to 24.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds to me that there's a lot of danger in the zero tolerance policy. There's hypocrisy there's inaccuracy, there's the ability for abuse, and ultimately it's kind of meaningless and aimed at suppressing things that probably shouldn't be suppressed. Because
I'm going to throw this in here too, real quick. I know we got to get off of this thing. We've been going and going.
You don't have to. I can talk till midnight. You're the one that works tomorrow.
So look, they have examples of the ever broadening scope of zero tolerance policies include the treatment of nail files, paper clips, scissors, and plastic knives as weapons, and aspirin, Midol inserts as drugs. How does that work? So you can't have paper clips or scissors?
Girls can't take Midol for their monthly issue.
Yeah, I mean, how does that even work? So you're gonna be expelled for having aspirin? I mean, I don't know. Anyway.
In other words, you're just getting exactly what I'm saying. It is so vague. It is arbitrary, and it is ultimately hypocritical.
Right. Yep.
Anyhow, on that note, Chardonnay, it is so good to see you again. It is good to be back. Today is 15th of November, I think.
Yep.
And I will see you at latest on Thursday, but probably Wednesday.
Okie dokie. See you then.
Good night, and let me know how the Zoom meeting with your fellow student, your other members of your student group go.
Yes, I sure will.
Just want to get one last good look at you before the evening's over. Anyhow, Chardonnay, you take care and say hi to that little girl for me.
I sure will. You too. Bye, Charles.
Bye-bye.